Today I'm meeting with Shawn Edgington of Palisades Counseling. And he and I have gotten to know each other over the past few months, and that's been great. And he was kind enough to offer to be interviewed for the channel. And so, Shawn, it's great to have you here today.
Thank you. It's
Thank you
good to
for
be
making
here.
the time for this as well. And as I always do with the people we interview, would you please give us your contact information so that those who are watching who might want to work with your practice in the future would know how to find you?
Sure. My name's Shawn Edgington, as he said, and with Palisades Counseling. I'm the owner. I'm a licensed psychologist, been in the Provo area for 30 years, and our office number is 801-356-0014. Um, and we'd love to have you give us a call if there's anything that seems like it could be helpful from what we talk about today.
In fact, let's talk a little bit about where a therapist or counselor can be helpful, because and Shawn knows this, but a lot of the viewers may not know this. But there, sometimes I feel like in family law there is an overemphasis on therapy and counseling, and while it can be helpful, oftentimes people will simply say, "Well, throw some therapy or counseling at this." Not so much for the people that are getting it, but so that the people recommending it will look sensitive and helpful. Do you ever get that feeling when people will come to you? Do people come to your practice and the people you work with who have been court ordered to do things, or are they more often saying, no, I'm doing this on my own?
They do sometimes come court ordered, but far more frequently is them seeking counseling on their own, and frankly, that goes better. Anybody seeking counseling for their own motives, for their own reasons, is much more likely to have a positive experience with it than somebody who is required by the court system to do so. Not that good things can't come out of it if it's court ordered, but as a therapist, one of my first questions is, well, what brings you here today? And if the answer to that is, well, I have to be, that takes down the the probability of us having a great experience a little bit because they're not necessarily seeking something, they're just forced to.
And before we get to the questions you and I discussed in advance that we're going to cover, this one came to mind. Have you ever had people that have been court ordered into therapy that you've encountered, the people you work with have said, I don't know why this person was referred. There's nothing wrong with this person. This person doesn't have a problem that would be appropriate for us to address. Do you ever
For
get that?
sure. For sure. Um, there's, at least for me, there's kind of an eye roll like, okay, we've got to appease the court or appease whatever requirement. Um, but yes, that does happen. Um, However, if sometimes there can be real good comes from it in spite of that, in spite of it seeming at an initial look that there's not a really significant issue that would be therapy appropriate, we can find some good out of it. But again, as I said before, it's always better when they're seeking it voluntarily, just because
And
I
if
think
someone,
something
I
out of
didn't
it.
mean to interrupt, if someone has been referred to counseling or therapy and you're saying, we don't see a problem here. I mean, we've looked at this with an open mind and we really don't see a problem here. Is it appropriate for you to tell that person and say, you may want to, I'll be happy to write a note or a letter for the court saying, I've met with you. I know why you're here. I know what you've been ordered to do, but I don't see any need for you to do it.
Yeah, you bet. I'll do that actually. I don't see those clients in that situation a whole lot, but I've done
Yeah.
that a number of times over the years where um, I will often in those settings give an assessment that or two or three that corroborate what I'm seeing or not seeing as an issue. Just to, I gave a depression assessment, I gave an anxiety assessment, I gave a, XYZ assessment as per the court's requirement or as per the court's desire to address this issue. My clinical observation and this assessment both corroborate that there's not a whole lot going on that needs to be addressed in therapy. Um, I I have, while I can never guarantee somebody's future behavior, I have a degree of confidence that they're in a good place and not necessarily needing further
Yeah.
counseling. That'll usually take one to two, maybe three visits to get to that point to say with some confidence that things are looking good. But yeah, that happens.
Well, that's an excellent answer. Thank you very much. You gave the detail that I think other people that might be in that situation would be looking for. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet.
And so now we're going to talk to things about a little more feel good subjects. Uh, and so, do you ever come across people who the breakup of their relationship or their marriage has had a profound effect on their identity? They don't know
Um,
who they are anymore.
Absolutely. So, so common. Because it truly does, when we introduce ourselves, even we will say, "No, who are you?" Or, that my name is Shawn, or whatever. And then you say, "Oh, where are you from? What do you do? What's your occupation?" I'm married with 3 kids, or I'm divorced, or I'm a widower, or whatever. We have this identity in terms of our relationship that we speak to all the time. And if the divorce has occurred or is in process, we introduce ourselves differently. We say something different about who we are, just at the most basic of levels.
Do you find that people can bounce back generally pretty well, or is it 50-50? Or what do people do when so much of their identity is built around their identity as a spouse and as a parent? Uh, how do people react to divorce in your experience?
Um, it's an enormous loss. In some ways, I've heard many people say this, and it rings true to me. In some ways, the divorce is more difficult than a death, in that a divorce is a choice, at least by one of the partners, and um, in a actual death situation, there's some finality. The
Yeah.
person is no longer here. We don't see them. We don't interact with them. But in a divorce, the the relationship, of course, has ended. But we continue to interact with them. We have to make arrangements with children, finances, housing. There's so many ongoing interactions that very much affect the person involved, and they're going to go on for years and sometimes decades longer, which is really, really painful, especially when you've built a life with your identity uh, conjoined with that person. And now, if there's children involved, particularly, we are involved by virtue of the children, but not personally, and that's really painful. As per your
Yeah.
question about do people 50-50 come through that? I couldn't give a specific statistic there, but my just observation is that if people are willing to speak to the struggle, if they have a support network in place, if they lean on friends or siblings or parents or others, hopefully not their children, and for emotional support in that situation, the children are going to have their own wrestles there. But if they can be open about those struggles and lean on others and talk with them and share the process of what's going on for them, then there's a much greater likelihood that they come through that on the other side, feeling a sense of resolution. It's still painful. It's still hard. It's still a loss of what was a dream or an idea that they wanted, but they can come through that, rather than just avoid it or like look away and not really address it. That doesn't work.
I was going to say that, like you pointed out, a death, at least you know that that person has died. And whether one has made peace with it, you're kind of forced to adapt. And you will
Yes.
eventually. You
Yes.
can't say, well, I'm going to call dad. Oh, wait, no, dad has died. I couldn't do that even if I wanted to.
Right.
As opposed to like with divorce, like you say, the relationship doesn't really die. It kind of just is lingering forever and just dying, but you never really can cut yourself free of that.
Yes.
And that can really exhaust and drain people, can't it?
So challenging because just exactly what you said, it's not ever really gone. That you're going to get a text, and maybe it gives them a little jolt of cortisol, or oh no, what do they want this time, or what's the fight going to be this time, or is there a did something go on with the kids, or the drop off time, and if you get that jolt each time, those things each time you see a text or an email, that can be really, really painful, and kind of keep you on high alert all the time. That's really tough.
Do people in therapy or counseling find ways to handle that they wouldn't have come up with on their own?
Well, we certainly hope so. I think sometimes people, you alluded to this earlier, sometimes people think that therapy is going to be the answer to all of the things, and it certainly is not. But therapy itself, I think, can be a tool. Just one of the most, because I was just talking about the constant, at text or emails or other reminders, just being able to categorize and say, I'm gonna take 10 minutes a day and respond to these texts or emails or address these issues, but then set it down for the other 23 hours and 50 minutes of the day can be a helpful thing so that it's, and that's a little too neat and tidy of a solution. I know life doesn't really work that well, that you can segment it, things into
No,
10
but I mean,
sections.
you're describing a process, not at the actual experience
Yeah.
itself.
If
So
if if there can be some turn the light switch on, I'm doing this, I'm addressing it, and I'm going to turn it off and I'm going to set that down, put it on a shelf, whatever the metaphor. That can help people um, so that again they're just not always on high adrenaline, the jolts of cortisol or adrenaline are just going and going and going and going. I looked up relative to this for this video because I've used this metaphor before, that can mosquitoes in fact kill large animals drop by drop, and the answer is yes. I mean, it would take a swarm of mosquitoes, but it has occurred that very large animals can be taken down by little drops of blood taken one at a time, or a half a drop of blood. And what does that have to do with anything? Well, if you're always getting a half a drop here and a half a drop there, and that happens 10, 20, 30 times a day, it can feel like it just takes you down, just saps your energy. But if you can limit that to, again, confined spaces, confined times, you can work through that.
that actually kind of leads into the next question I had for you, which is, do you see people making bad decisions when they're going through a breakup of a relationship, whether that includes a lawsuit, the underlying divorce action, or child custody dispute? And if so, my guess is the answer is yes. Why do they make these bad decisions, and what kinds of bad decisions do you see most frequently?
That's a thoughtful question. Yes, I see that, and I think like we all tend to do, especially, and it's so tricky in a divorce situation because the relationship was once very trusting, very intimate, very close, connected. Our lives are formed together, and then if we're going through a divorce, we need to switch away from all of those frameworks to one of, I need to make the most practical and logical decision. Wait, when you spend too much money on your child's Christmas, that comes from hopefully a place of love and tenderness, that kind of thing. And now we're just going to go logic. Well, we don't have the money to afford that, so cut that off. Well, that's a tough transition for a lot of people to make. But if we're in the emotionality of it, we're not tending to be in the rationality of it. There's the most well-known marriage therapist researcher, John and Julie Gottman, used to have an exercise that they would have people do all the time, the couples, when they're having a disagreement. It sounds kind of hokey, but there was research to back it up, that they would have them check their heart rate. And if their heart rate was 15% higher than their resting heart rate when they were in the middle of an argument or a disagreement, he would have them stop what they were doing, pause, wait till their heart rate would drop back down to normal ranges, and then re-engage the conversation. Because if they're ratcheted up too high physically, emotionally, they don't think as clearly and rationally, and they make poorer, more emotional decisions than maybe longer term logical decisions.
Yeah, I was going to say, and even if you're one of the few people that does still think well under pressure, if you're putting pressure on somebody else, then you're making it hard for them to deal rationally with you as well. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. That's, I had not thought of it that way, but you become, yeah, irrational yourself and make poor decisions, say foolish things, or things that maybe 5 years from now you go, why did I push that? Why did I make such a federal case of that small thing? Um, that mattered, but it again, am I doing what's best for my future, or am I doing what's best to calm my pain? And and if it's calming pain, that's a totally valid thing, but you do that with loved ones, trusted friends, maybe a therapist,
yeah.
others. You don't do that through the
Yeah,
court
at
system.
what cost to what I'm doing right now? Am I just about to blow up a fair settlement here just because I have a
Yes,
score to settle or
yes.
something like that? Now
Yes.
I know that you have to go shortly, and so this has been, I mean, I don't say this lightly. This has been so helpful, and I don't think I've heard anybody that we've interviewed previously say these exact things. And so I want to thank you right now
Oh,
before I
that's
forget, just because
that's
this has shed some light on some things that I think people can take away some very useful things here. I
I
will
hope
tell
so.
you that one of the things about that you just talked about with your reasoning and when you're under pressure, that's why I often tell my clients, I'll say, go ahead and write down what you want to send to your ex or your soon to be ex, but let me look at it first
Yeah.
before you
Yeah.
send it out, because I
Yeah.
don't want you to inadvertently do something stupid or say something that you don't even see. That's like, look, you didn't mean to come across a certain way, or maybe you did. Either way, let me go and look at it. Not to dumb it down, not to appease, but just to say, let's communicate carefully and productively. And so this, like
Yes.
you say, slowing down. If you want to look at heart rate, if you want to just say, I'll write down my thoughts and then I'm going to come back to it in 10 minutes or something
Yep.
like that after I've taken a walk or whatever. Very helpful.
Very
Very
helpful.
good advice.
And
Um,
and that's what a decision maker would do, not somebody who's trying to punch back. A
yeah.
wise decision maker would do.
And folks, I'll tell you from my side of this is that oftentimes they can be making progress towards reaching a resolution and not having to go to trial or not having to go to this hearing to work something out. And then suddenly you say something stupid in the moment and it can destroy all the goodwill that you've built up to that point. So
Yes.
that's a
Yes.
good point. Well, let me
Yes.
ask you this. What for my final question, what would be something people could ask themselves or they could analyze on their own to say, is therapy or counseling worthwhile? What questions would they ask so that they would determine yes or no?
No, that's a thoughtful question. Of course, as a therapist, I'm going to say, "Oh, sure, it's always worthwhile," but I don't believe that.
Thanks for the candor.
As per the previous conversation, I think if they're feeling alone, if you're well connected, you're going to be okay. You can work through it. If you can speak honestly about your emotions and have a supportive, not just a yes man kind of situation, but somebody who's going to be thoughtful and maybe challenge what's going on for you, then you're probably going to come out on the other side of it. Though it's going to be hard, there's going to be grief and mourning and loss and hurt and anger and frustration, all the emotions that come with those kind of major life changes. You're going to come out on the other side of it. If, however, you're feeling stuck and alone and unable to see resolutions beyond what you have and not have really an outlet or a safe place to go, maybe therapy would make sense. 150 years ago, there was no such thing as therapy, but people navigated that through their community, through religion, through relationships, and sometimes therapy can be where those things are not as strong as you'd want them to be. Therapy can be a resource there, um,
Appreciate that.
and we hope it's helpful. But I would certainly not suggest it always is.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And really, this was some enlightening discussion that I've learned some things that I hadn't thought of myself, and I appreciate that. So,
Yeah.
Sean, one more time. So, for those that would, and you're in the Provo area, is that correct?
Yep. Provo, just right off University Avenue in Jamestown, 3319 North University Avenue, 801-356-0014, Palisades Counseling. If we
Thanks
can
so
be of
much.
help, give us a call.
Hey,
And it's good to see you, Eric. Yeah,
thanks.
likewise.
Good to see you too.
It's like like there's a friend. I like yeah, give that guy a hug kind of thing. So
Well,
nice to
thank
see
you.
you. Thanks for investing a minute in my what might be BS advice, but I appreciate it. So I appreciate you taking the chance.
Thanks.
Thanks, Eric. Good to see you.
Hey, bye bye.
Bye bye.